Israel Unlimited. JDC Israel Unlimited is part of JDC, which is the world's largest Jewish humanitarian organization. We work in over 70 countries. We've been around for over 100 years. And here in Israel, where I'm joining you from today, the organization works a little bit differently, and I'll explain why. In Israel, we have a 50-50 partnership with the government. And what we do is we develop services for underserved populations to close the socioeconomic gaps that we see within the country. And the way that we do it is, again, we develop services, we work out the kinks, we make sure that they work the best possible way that they can, and then we hand those programs over to the government to scale nationally. In addition to that, we're working a lot in terms of policy change, seeing where we can change the way that the government is sort of thinking about the services that it is already providing, and improving those services to make them more effective and more efficient. JDC Israel Unlimited is the department within JDC Israel that works with people with disabilities. And again, our department is working on increasing autonomy and independence for people with disabilities. We want to see equal opportunities. We want to see financial resilience. We want to see that the community is embracing people with disabilities, getting rid of stigmas, changing attitudes, and really making them an integrated part of society. So I want you guys to all take a minute and think about all the little things that you've done since you've gotten up this morning. Getting out of bed, getting dressed, having breakfast, making food, traveling to wherever it is that you're sitting right now. And while those little day-to-day things seem very trivial to a lot of us, for people with disabilities, they can be major obstacles. And I want you to think about if all of your energy went to doing all those little minor tasks throughout the day, think about how difficult it would then be to have the energy and the space to then really, go for your dreams and really make something of yourself. So one of the things that we saw at JDC Israel Unlimited was that while we're working a lot with the government and we're working on creating services and we're working on policy change, one of the things that we also really need to change in order to create big impact for people with disabilities is to improve those little tiny things, those little intersections throughout the day that make life more frustrating and more difficult. So what we said is we really need to get the entire ecosystem involved. And today I want to talk to you about how we've really worked very closely with the business sector in order to improve the lives of people with disabilities. Now I'm going to start with something, we're going to start by talking about how tiny little changes can make massive impact. Then I want to talk to you guys a little bit about how technology makes life more accessible for people with disabilities. And finally, I'm going to talk to you about how we can use the big data that we can collect from companies and use that to really influence policy and kind of come full circle. So little changes, massive impact. So what we realized is that if we really want to make a change in the consumer space, we really need to get the big businesses on board. So we went to a company called Strauss, which is one of the leading food companies in Israel, and we said to them, look, we have a proposition for you. Right now, there are 20% of the population is people with disabilities, and that number is similar all around the world. And what you're doing is you're missing out on 20% of your consumer market by not making your products accessible to people with disabilities. So we said to them, look, if you look at the number of people that have celiac in the world, it's 1% of the population, right? Look at how many products and restaurants and things that are out there that are gluten-free and that have and how much change that's made for people who have gluten sensitivities. Look at people who are vegetarian. They make up 5% of the population, and there's so many things now that are available that are meat-free, etc. But if you look at people with disabilities, they make up 20% of the population. So gluten-free, you've got 1% of the population that's like so happy about this. Think about 20% of the population and what that means. And we showed them a video of a girl eating a bag of potato chips, and you see her and she's really trying to open up this bag, and Strauss, who are so used to seeing kids so excited about their chips, opening up a bag of potato chips and eating them with such joy, suddenly they see a girl who's really trying to open up this bag and she just can't do it. And we finished showing them the video, and they were just sitting there in shock, and they were like, we never thought about this. Not from any malicious place, but it had never occurred to them that people with disabilities are part of their consumer market. And I'll say something else about that. people with disabilities, because of their limitations, they have less products that are accessible to them, which means that there are less products that they are able to use. And on top of that, they are oftentimes they have lower income. They have higher expenses because of all of their medical needs. And what we see is they have much higher unmet needs. They don't have the financial ability to access the large amount of products that are out there because they're simply not accessible. And so when we said that to Strauss, they said, you know what, let's make a change. And I want, if we're talking about tiny changes, this is a change that they made. They made this tiny little notch at the top of the bag, which suddenly makes it so much easier to rip open the bag and eat the chips. And you see this girl at the end, we showed them the video of this girl, and she's opening up her bag of chips and she's so excited. Now, if we're thinking about all the little, again, intersections within our day, where it's just the little thing of opening up a bag of chips, or using a toothbrush, or getting dressed in the morning, having clothes that are easier to put on, all of those little things can make a massive change for people with disabilities. I think the potato chip bags was an excellent example of how a little thing can make a massive difference. But if there's one more thing that I can drive home right now before we continue today, is that people with disabilities are not disabled. We as a society have created their disability by not making the world accessible. And one of the things that has made the world so accessible to all of us, if you think about globalization and technology, is just that, is technology. And if we're talking about Israel as, the startup nation, being such a, this exciting place of startups and new innovations, people with disabilities should really be a part of that. If you look at what technology can be used for today, it is something that, makes us able to communicate with each other. It's something that makes our day-to-day lives, all those little tasks, going to the bank, going to the supermarket, suddenly we can do all of those things online. We're able to tell the light to turn on and off. For us, it might be an issue of convenience, but for people with disabilities, it is life-changing. If you are, stuck in your bed and you're not able to get up to turn the light on and off, think about what it means to be able to decide that it's time for you to go to sleep and you want to turn the light off, and not having to call somebody in to do that for you. So for people with disabilities, technology has that added element of making people feel more secure and more safe. It gives a lot more independence and autonomy, not having to depend on other people. It means that family members and caregivers can feel more at ease that the person with disabilities is able to do things on their own. And so it's extremely life-changing. But if we actually look at the number of people with disabilities using technology, we see that only 1 in 10 people are actually are using these solutions. So that means 90% of people with disabilities are not using technology to improve their lives. And I'll say more than that. Of the people that do bring technology into their life, we see that 75% of people abandon the technologies within 3 months because they don't know how to use them. Now, if we take into consideration that there are 60,000 different technological solutions out there available for people with disabilities, or for the general public, we see that there's such potential out there. So why are people with disabilities not using those solutions? I'll tell you why. Think about, trying something new. You want to go see a play, or you want to go, see if you can go try out for your local sports team. What are you going to do? You're going to Google it. You're going to check online. Think about what it means if you're Googling assistive technologies. The computer, Google doesn't know whether you're talking about, solutions for blindness, solutions for mobility, solutions for people with cognitive or memory loss. And so it becomes very, very overwhelming to start Googling it, and you get to a million different websites. There's no systematic way to see what's available out there for you. On top of that, all right, so you found something that sort of looks right for you. You're not really sure. How do you then, how do you get that technology? Do you order it? Do you have to talk to somebody? Is the government going to pay for it? Is it going to come out of your pocket? Again, if we're talking about people that already have, higher financial strains, how do you make that happen? And this is where we decided that we're going to get involved. So again, we're talking about the business sector, we're talking about our work together with the government, and we're talking about the social services that we're developing for people with disabilities. So what we said is, okay, we partnered with a business called Advisor, and they have an AI platform that essentially kind of sucks in all of the different technology solutions that are out there into one place. You put in a profile that says what your functionality limitations are. Again, we're looking at functionality. We're looking at a person's abilities, not their diagnosis. We're not saying that all people with autism, all people with Down syndrome need the same things. We are looking at what each individual needs. We're looking at their personal goals. What is it that you want to do with your life? And if you need a special kind of technology to make that element of your dream come true, then that's what we're going to look for. So we use this platform. We get all the different options that are out there. It's still going to be a lot of options. And this is where we have a coordinator come into the picture. We work here with Beit Easy Shapiro. And they come in and they have a coordinator that sits with the person with disabilities, goes through all the different products. They talk together and decide which one of those many different solutions are the best for that particular individual. And together they decide what is the best. Once that product is then purchased and brought into their home, they have that coordinator that they can speak to, that they can contact if there's any kind of troubleshooting issues. How do I make it more personalized for me? How do, if something stops working, what am I supposed to do? They have a contact person, which is so important if we're talking about the number of people that usually abandon technologies so quickly. And the third element that we have here is the government. Now the government until recently has said, okay, you need a wheelchair, you have option A and you have option B. But what happens if option A and option B are not good for me? What happens if on top of not being able to use my legs, I can't use my right arm? How is that wheelchair going to work for me? And so what we're doing is we're talking to the government about changing the way that they purchase different technologies and solutions for people with disabilities to make them more individualized and more personalized. So instead of the government saying, okay, you know what, you have option A and you have option B, we're telling the government, no, instead of that, why don't you say you have X amount of money, use it for whatever accessibility solutions you need to make your life better. Which means at the end of the day, that for the government, it is using its resources more effectively and more efficiently because people are not buying things with government money, which are then left in the garage or the drawer and not used. And the person with disabilities has a product that is actually useful and accessible to them. So this is a way that we're kind of bringing together the entire ecosystem of, again, business, government, and the social sector to really make sure that people with disabilities have the solutions that they need in order to make their lives better. And now we're gonna show you guys a little video about a man called Moshe. He was injured in a work accident and he has memory loss. And I'm going to show you guys a little video about how technology has helped to improve his life.
קם בבוקר, לא יודע איזה יום, לא יודע איזה תאריך, לא יודע מה אני עושה היום. לא לזכור דברים, לא לזכור פרטים, לא לזכור אנשים, לא לזכור שמות. עזוב את הסביבה, לא מכיר את עצמי, לא יודע מי אני, מה אני. וזה כל בוקר ככה חוזר על עצמו. לפני שנה התחילו לי כאבי ראש, שהתגברו. אני זוכר שצרחתי שם, נפלתי ומאז לא זוכר, עד שקמתי אחרי הניתוח. אני מתעורר ואני לא מבין איפה אני נמצא. נולדתי מחדש. לכאורה בן אדם שלם, קם, אבל הוא יוצא מהחדר שלו והוא לא יודע לאן הוא יוצא. והוא לא יודע לאן הוא צריך לחזור. מסתבר שבלי זיכרון אפשר לעשות כלום. הכל היה נופל על סוזי. הייתי מתקשר אליה עשרות פעמים ביום. מה יש לנו היום? מה עושים היום? מה אני צריך לעשות? עכשיו היא עונה לי על משהו, ואחרי 2 דקות אני לא זוכר מה שאלתי אותה, ואני שואל בלופים. אבל כבר שאלת את זה, אבל כבר דיברנו על זה. אז אני מתעצבן, אבל אני לא זוכר, אני שואל אותך שוב. אז זה היה גורם למתח. מריבות, ויכוחים, אנטי מאוד גדול שפשוט מרחיק. והוא ניסה פתקים, והוא ניסה תזכורות בנייד, והוא ניסה וישענות עלינו, ותלות בנו, וכלום לא הלך. זה לא עזר לו, הוא לא זכר. ואז מגיע הממואפ, שזה נקודת אור ענקית.
אחד הפתרונות שהביאו לבית הזה הרבה שקט ושלווה. התלות בנו, בבני הבית, יורדת.
הממואפ החזיר לי את השליטה. את השליטה של הסדר יום, של המעורבות, יום, תאריך, שעה, משימות.
הכל דינמי ומשתנה, ואני מזינה משימה ומוחקת משימה ומעלה תמונה ומוחקת שירים.
עכשיו הייתה לי התראה קולית, זה אשתי השנייה קוראת לי ואני יודע שצריך לקרות משהו, לעשות משהו, ואז אני הולך לממואפ.
הוא מאוד מנותק רגשית, ואנחנו מאוד מנסים לחבר אותו.
חגגנו לרונן יום הולדת כאן בגינה בחוץ, והוא היה מאושר והרמנו אותו ושרנו לו. זה נתן לי עכשיו לטעום טעימה קטנה מהרגע המאושר הזה. זה בדיוק הרגע שהרמנו אותו, אני מצליח לראות את האושר שלו בפנים. אז זה עוד תפעול של המוח.
הוא יכול לשתוק ולא לומר כלום, ויכול להגיע אותו רגע שנוטע בנו את התקווה, להמשך, לעתיד, שהוא נזכר.
אני לא מסוגל לחשוב עכשיו מה היינו עושים בלי הממואפ. אני לא יודע אם המסר שאני מעביר לכם הוא מספיק כדי להמחיש לכם עד כמה זה חשוב הדבר הזה.
זה עוזר לו מאוד. זה מציל אותו.
We looked at how small changes can make massive impact. We look at how technology solutions can really change the world for people with disabilities. And the final example that I want to share with you guys today is how we take all of those elements, small changes, big impact, technology, and then how we sort of complete that picture with using data that we get from the different business partners that we have at Israel Unlimited. So I'll just go back one step and I'll say that one of the major things that we work at on Israel Unlimited is housing and transportation for people with disabilities. We really believe that bringing people with disabilities out into the community, not having them in institutions, really making them part of society is the most important thing that we could do, both for society and for people with disabilities. And so one of the major things that we work on is independent living. We provide them with, again, with services, and we're working on policy change to make sure that they have affordable housing. But once you get to, bring people out into the community, that's great. But if they're cooped up in their house all day, that's not really going to help anybody. And the way that we are sort of overcoming that step is making public transportation affordable and available and accessible to people with disabilities. Now, in Israel, I will just preface and say public transportation is the way to get around, particularly if you live in the cities. And in Israel, most people use an app called Move It, which is an app that basically you put in where you're located, where your destination is, and it'll tell you exactly how to go. Travel, take this bus, walk to this bus stop, get off here, take the train, and it'll tell you exactly where to go. This is an app that has over 1 billion users around the world in 112 countries, so it also has the ability to scale massively. We're working with Move It in order to make their app accessible to people with disabilities, and I'll give you an example. If a person with disabilities wants to take a train, the way that they need to do it today is they need to contact the train service 24 hours before they want to take a train, and they need to tell them, I need somebody at the platform ready to help me get onto the train. Now, I don't know about you guys, I have missed a train or two in my life, I have changed my plans at the last minute, and people with disabilities simply don't have that option. Now imagine if you're running late for work and the person who is on the train tracks ready to help you says, okay, you didn't come on time, I'm gonna go back to my coffee break, or I'm gonna go do something else. And suddenly you're on this platform, 5 minutes later, we wanna catch the next train and there's nobody there to help you. So one of the things that Move It can do is that it can have direct contact with the train service. You can let it know that you're coming so that in real time you have somebody who is there and able to help you. I'll give you another example. If you're looking at, if you're trying to you need to catch a bus, right? You're taking one bus, you need to travel to the next bus stop in order to catch the next bus. What happens if you don't, if you're slower than what the app is used to? What happens if instead of taking 5 minutes to go from point A to point B, it takes you 10 minutes and the next bus is actually 2 hours later? So that route is not going to be accessible to you. What you need is a route that's going to be take into account how fast you travel, how fast you move, what kinds of transportation is accessible to you, whether a bus stop is accessible to you. And so Move It can take all of those different parameters, put them into their app, and make transportation more accessible.
Our main goal in Israel Unlimited is to maximize independent living for people with disabilities. We want to reduce the gap for equal opportunities to participate in the community between people with and without disabilities. Transportation has a critical role in doing this because transportation for all of us is the main way to get to work, to visit friends, to go to visit our families. It's the main way to be a participant in social, in economic, in community life. But the public transportation is not accessible enough. We don't have public transportation everywhere in Israel. Even in places that we have, a lot of times there's not enough buses. They stop in a place that is not good enough for people to use, and we need to make a big change. We used a survey that 6,000 people answered it, and we learned from the survey that people with disabilities, they want to use public transportation, but they don't have enough knowledge of how to use it or where they can find the information. So once we understood that we have a lack of data and we need some digital platform so everyone can use, we reached out to the Data Digital team here in JDC, and together we started to work with Move It.
So Move It simplifies urban mobility around the world and making cities better places to live, less congested, less polluted, safer to travel. And we do it by providing users an app that aggregates all the information and guidance that citizens need in order to travel using public transportation and shared transportation in a safer and convenient way.
Move It and Joint are sitting together in a round table and thinking of ways and solutions to improve and enhance the Move It application in a way that we can reach every person with different kinds of disabilities. Not only people with motor disabilities, also with people with cognitive disabilities.
I'm very, very excited to work with Move It. Together, we build something new that everyone wins.
Move It brings to the table the cutting-edge technology and the data, and the Joint brings to the table the social know-how. And together, we can really improve the lives of people with disabilities.
I just met a gorgeous 25-year-old guy that he lives in some institution. And I asked him, what is your dream? He told me he loves hamburgers, but he cannot go to the mall by himself. He always needs someone to go with him. We trained him to use the Move It app. And after a few days, he called me and he told me that he went by himself to eat a hamburger on the mall. He told me it was the best day of his life. If we really care about our clients, technology solutions is the right way to do it.
You saw the Move It video. You saw how impactful having an app that's accessible, how important that is for people with disabilities in order to be able to move around, go to work, go to school, go visit their friends and family, which is something that's so important for each and every one of us. But there's another element here that is critical when it comes to, again, working with the government, with the system, creating policy change, and that's data. The fact that we have an additional source of data that's not based on government data collection, things like municipality bills, things like rental stipends, things like the census. If we have additional sources of data that the government is not accessible to the government, and we bring that into policy change, that can have massive impact. And I'll give you an example. If we have information from Move It about transportation trends of people with disabilities, if we have the ability to see where they're going, where they're not going, where there are larger percentages of people with disabilities living, if we have the ability to see that, for example, think about if there's an industrial area where there are a lot of jobs. If people with disabilities are not able to get to that area because of transportation issues, think about what the implications of that are when it comes to employment and things like that. So if we have that information, that is something that we can then use to go back to the government and say, look, these are trends that we're seeing, something needs to be done about this. And then they have the ability to really make change on a national level when it comes to policy and decision making. I'll also add one more thing, which I also alluded to before, which is the massive scalability of something like this. Working with the business sector, working with for-profit companies, they want to make money and they want to make money fast. And so they have the ability to pivot and to make change extremely quickly, and they have the ability to scale it very, very quickly. If we're talking about an application like Move It, where they have 1 billion users around the world, we're not just talking anymore about people in Israel with disabilities who now have these accessibility features. We're talking about people all over the world who suddenly have that access that they didn't have before. So even the little changes that we make within our own little ecosystem, when we're working with the business sector, particularly the international business sector, we have the ability to scale internationally extremely quickly. I want you to think about the different elements that we talked about today. Small change, massive impact, the use of technology to make life more accessible for people with disabilities, the ability to use data and different technological solutions in order to really make change. I want you to think about all those little elements. I want you to think about all the different intersections in your morning, in your day that you come across. And I want you to think to yourself, first of all, I want you to be aware. I want you to look at the need. I want you to think that there are other people around you that maybe the little trivial things that you do with your life are not that trivial for them. Maybe they need that tiny little extra bit to make their world more accessible to them. So I want you to be aware of the needs of the people around you. I want you to take a look at things through a different lens. Then I want you to think to yourself, okay, what can I change in order to make that world a little bit more accessible, to make that world a little bit more empowering for the people around me. And finally, I want you to think to yourself, okay, I've identified the need. I see what the solution might be, but how do I actually implement that? And this is where Changemakers comes in. I want you to think about the places where, whether it's talking to your dean, whether it's talking to your employer, whether it's making the change yourself. I want you to think about how it is that you can make a change in your environment and make it better for the people around you. I wonder if this actually is any easier. I guess it is.